over the phone. So would I. I don't care if you see Dr. Kelly here. That's good.
All right, it is 6 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and call the tentative budget meeting to order. John, if you could call the roll.
Atkins. Here. Crawford. Deppert. Mark Goddard.
Here.
Sam Goddard. Graff.
Here.
Hall. Harris. Hopkins.
Here.
Jostin.
Here.
Longfellow.
Here.
Mennel.
Here.
Mingus. Nelms. Pageant. Trail.
Here.
Rich Stimson. Schmidtgall. Schneider. Sen.
Here.
Stahl.
Here.
Chairman Zimmerman.
Here.
Crawford.
We have a quorum, we'll do business. If we could rise for the invocation of pledge.
Heavenly Father, thank you for the privilege to gather together in this free country. I pray that we never take these freedoms for granted. We're so hard fought and won. Pray that we can protect those things and that our debate tonight can be civil and honor you even when there are areas where we may disagree. Father, I lift up the citizens of Israel tonight as they have a 1-year anniversary from the attack. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem and peace in the Middle East. Sometimes when things seem impossible, you're a God of possible. We just give that to you. And the citizens in Florida, as the hurricanes just keep coming, Father, just watch over and protect them. And I pray for those members here that are experiencing health issues or family members, that it's a great position that you can watch over and heal their bodies. We give this evening to you, Father. Again, as we go through this budget, we want to honor our citizens and honor you and all the things that, decisions that we make, and be good stewards of the money that we're entrusted with. Thanks for our employees and just being a great God and a sovereign God. In your name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, any communications from members of the public? County employees, elected officials? Seeing none, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Finance Chairman Graff. I do have the envelope, and I'll have it at the next couple meetings for a Christmas gift for Sandy, if you want to pitch in board members. So, thanks. Nick?
Thanks, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, welcome everyone, and thanks for the hard work on this. This is the either 12th or 13th budget that I've worked on as a county board member, and it's by far the most complicated budget we've ever attempted in those 12 or 13 years. A lot of moving parts. Staff's done an excellent job of putting this together. The department heads have worked very hard as well. I had a budget member or finance committee member assigned to every budget, so they've looked at it. We've looked at these budgets 3 times now in finance budget meetings, so this is the 5th opportunity that we've had to review these budgets. So there's been a lot of work done, a lot of discussion already has happened. That doesn't mean it can't reoccur, but let's try to polish rather than tear up tonight if we can, and move through this as quickly as we can. Again, I'm not trying to discourage any conversation because we need to have that. That's why we're meeting so many times, so we can take care of this, but I think we should be at the finishing stage now rather than at the building stage. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to our finance director. Mindy, would you give an overview of this year's budget?
Yes, thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to start with just a couple of pieces of general information about the budget for those who have not heard it before. This year in the budget, we did focus on a couple of things. One was pushing the cell phone and iPad costs out of just one line in the general fund and into each individual department. So you will see that as a new line item in most of the general fund departments. If they use a iPad or if they use a cell phone, either personal and get reimbursed or the county pays for it, you'll see that expense now in that department's budget. Also in fiscal year 25, we are trying to be a little bit more diligent about how we are treating and accounting for capital or fixed assets. And so I think everybody did a really great job of working with us on this, and we are trying to do it for a couple of reasons. One, we're really trying to put together a thoughtful and all-encompassing capital improvement plan that we have published in the budget book. We were trying to list all capital projects that we can foresee over the next 5 years in the plan so that we know what's coming. We think that's important. And then secondly, we are trying to follow the county's policy of anything that we spend more than $5,000 on and that has a useful life more than 1 year, that we account for that as a capital line so that we are appropriately accounting for those items and appropriately accounting for them in the beginning. The auditors will come behind us and kind of make adjustments if we're not putting things in the right place. So we're trying just to put a focus on that in this budget, and again, very well received. So we're thankful for that. Now, just moving on to, I guess I do have one other thing, PIP. So in the new pink budget books, we did update estimated and a little bit of estimated, but definitely year-to-date expenses and revenues for the end of August of 2024. So that should be more up-to-date information. Before we had April, now we're through the end of August. Unfortunately, PIP amounts didn't get approved by the board until September, so any adjustments related to PIP did not happen in this book. So you will still see in some budget lines potentially, we might have an estimated cost for a salary line that looks like it's going to be over what the budget is, and that very often, not always, but I mean it's very often going to be related to PIP not being put into that actual budget line yet. It might still be sitting in the PIP line. So if you have any questions about that, you can certainly ask, but that's a lot of times where you'll have a little bit of a mismatch. That journal entry, budget journal entry adjustment has been made, and so moving forward, that'll look much better. Okay, any questions on any of that? Okay, so in front of you, you should each have a pink budget book. So this is the most up-to-date information. Everything that was passed in the committee meetings is now included in that pink book. So if you do not have that, raise your hand. Kelly will be able to help get you a book. And then also in front of you, you should have a one-page budget adjustment sheet. And as we go through the actual budgets, we will discuss, bring forward all of these adjustments, and you will approve or not any of these adjustments that we're putting forward. And then lastly, from me, you guys should also have a copy of the presentation that I'm getting ready to give you. So you will be able to reference that as we go through. This time I did include, highlighted in yellow at the bottom, if there is a page in the budget book that matches what I'm talking about, that budget book page is listed there, so you'll know, oh, she's talking about all funds summary. That's listed on page 3 in the pink book. So hopefully that will help keep people knowing what specifically I'm talking about. Okay, now moving forward. So we're going to start off looking at the fiscal year 25 budget for all funds. So this includes the general fund, all special revenue funds, all informational fee funds, and the Heritage Lake Debt Service Fund. So all of this is combined together into this one summary sheet. And you'll notice here it says that our source of funds, or revenues for fiscal year 25, are expected to be $96,080,009. So that is all revenues, all sources of funds for all of the various funds at the county. Now we do an adjustment to show you, if we take out the CIP transfers, what that actually looks like as far as revenues. So there are $88,272,563 are expected to be brought into the county over all sources of revenue, excluding the CIP transfers. And then I did show like a little bar graph there to show you of the different categories of revenues, what is the dollar amount that we expect to receive in. I am happy to answer any questions on any of these, but in the spirit of keeping things moving, I'm not going to really talk about any of them in particular unless you have a question. Okay, so then I'm going to move to use of funds. So we are showing $137,689,012 of expenditures across all funds for fiscal year 24. That's what we're budgeting. Now we did, again, eliminate out the CIP transfers between the different funds, and that leaves us with an expected expenditure amount of $129,881,566. Again, on this one, I mean, I will just point out very quickly on this that we do have $47.9 million in personnel costs, which that is our biggest expense of the county. We kind of, operate working and knowing that. Then we have also significant in fiscal year 25, we have $45.9 million in capital outlay expected. And I'm going to go into more detail on that in the coming sheets, but just pointing those out here. So overall, across all funds, we are expecting to spend down our cash money by $41,609,003. So it is a somewhat significant spend down, but is a planned spend down. It is, we have planned out every dollar, how it's going to be funded, where it's going to be spent. So it's not a spend down that we are, concerned about. We know what's happening with it. In the bottom right portion of this slide, it does show you the funds with the largest budgeted change to fund balance. And I'll just highlight two right here. The general fund is going to be spent down by $7.6 million, and the CIP fund is going to be spent down by $24.5 million. I'll go into more detail on those, but those are the largest spend downs that we are anticipating. There's other money being spent down in highway funds, as you can see, and then in a couple of other funds as well. Does anybody have any questions about anything on this sheet? Okay, I'm going to move on to the next one. So this is looking at that same information, but it's looking at it for the general fund. So again, our sources of revenue for the general fund specifically, we are expecting to have revenues of approximately, budgeting revenues of $42,557,259. And again, I could go into detail on any of those, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about them, but I think I won't, if anybody doesn't have any questions. Okay, so then looking at the use of funds, the expenditures are expected to be for the general fund for fiscal year 25, $50,213,928. Now, there is a transfer out of the general fund to the CIP fund in fiscal year 25 budgeted. So we do have an adjusted expenditure amount that reflects that CIP fund transfer. It is expecting to have a total expenditures for fiscal year 25, excluding that CIP fund transfer, of $42,301,482. Again, in the general fund, the largest expense is the personnel costs, and that is $28.5 million. Does anybody have any questions about that? I'm going to talk more about transfers and capital as I go through. So this fund will be spent down by $7.7 million in fiscal year 25. And that is almost entirely due to the transfer from the general fund to the CIP fund. Okay, moving on to our next slide. Okay, so this is pages 9 through 12 in the pink book. It is our capital improvement plan. So these are the sheets that show you for every location what each project, just kind of little brief description, of what the project is, who is paying for the project. So it could be the CIP fund that's paying for the project, it could be the general fund, it could be highway, animal control. Then it also shows you the amount that is budgeted for the project and what year we're expecting to spend those dollars in. And that's just a very high level overview, but you have all of these same pages in the pink book. And if anyone has any specific questions, I'm happy to talk about them. Right.
On the spend down of the general fund, 7.7 million, is it your anticipation that would remain 7.7 lower, or will it replenish?
Well, every year we will get in a new influx of revenues. We'll get property tax dollars, PPRT. And so it is always going to be a cycle of we're going to bring in revenues and then we're going to spend down. Our revenues in fiscal year 25 are going to far outweigh that spend down. So as we have a better capital improvement plan set up, the amount, unless we're adding large projects, the amount will kind of level out over time. But this year in particular, we have a large capital project, and we also added quite a few more projects to the plan. So as long as we keep doing that, more projects we add that are higher dollar value, the more money we'll put towards the capital improvement plan.
And one last question, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Let me address your first question.
Yeah, go ahead.
The question you're asking, though, depends on what the board does in subsequent budget years as well.
Yeah.
I mean, if the board next year decides not to do a lot of CIPs or reduce the CIPs, that could fluctuate either way. So you really can't answer that question based upon predicting what future boards will do.
Well, yeah, I guess I didn't ask the question the way I intended.
Okay.
So let me try again. So the 7.7 million spent down, would it be the finance department or the administrator's desire for that to be about the amount that we continue with? I realize there's revenue and there's expense, and the difference is what we spend out at. But is that is that healthy? That 7.7 million spend down financially, is it healthy? And then finally, is there a maximum spend down where the finance department would be concerned that it's too low? Thanks.
Yeah, I don't think that you can sustain a $7 million spend down year to year based off of our general fund balance. So at this point, when we're at the end of fiscal year 25, we're expected to be at a level that has been determined comfortable, but you couldn't sustain that and do that year after year, no.
Do you have a comment, Mr. Chairman?
No, I'm just trying to determine if that answered your question.
Yeah, yeah, so except for is there a point of spend down where you would be concerned it's too much, too low? You know what I mean? The spend down is too high, which means the money is too low.
Take that a little bit too. Historically, the county has been in the 50% to 70% fund balance range. Went up recently. This then takes it closer to a little above 50%. I believe we're at about 52, 53% before you take in contingency into consideration. This, a good amount of this transfer is what the board approved for the new Justice Center Annex in order to have the higher budget for that project. And also with having CIP projects, we added 1.6 million in addition to it. So those contribute to having the higher transfer. Mindy will get to another sheet in a couple minutes here that will show the operating surplus and where we are. We actually have an operating surplus, so it's not that we would envision having that kind of deficit. It's just we have chosen to use it fund balance towards the annex project and existing buildings projects.
Thank you.
I guess I'm struggling to understand what you're asking. Are you advocating we spend it down farther? Is that, do you have something that we're not doing that you want us to do? I guess I'm not quite seeing where you're going.
The source or the, sorry.
The motivation for my question was simply to acquire information. I hadn't made a decision on whether, I wanted to know what the finance department thought as to what those norms at the top and the bottom are, rather than before I make a judgment. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Thanks. Okay, so this page shows you all 4 pages that are in the budget book, so you can look at that, but I'm gonna move on to the summary sheet. And on the summary sheet, it shows you for each of the 5 funds that we have budgeted capital projects for from fiscal year 25 through 29, it shows how much is going to be spent each year out of each fund over the next 5 years. And so you can see there the highway funds are expecting to spend $34.3 million over the next 5 years, and you can see in yellow there, that light yellow, that we are expecting to spend $54.3 million over the next 5 years out of the CIP fund for capital projects that we have included in the plan. And that number is going to flow through onto the next sheet that I have, but just want to point out in total we're expecting to spend just over $100 million in capital, on capital projects over the next 5 years. Anybody have anything on that? Okay, so that $54.3 million flows through onto this next page where it shows you how we are determining the transfer that we're going to need from the general fund to the CIP fund. So the 5-year capital plan has $54.3 million of expected expenditures. $43.4 million is for the Justice Center Annex, the remaining budget. Some money has been spent on that project to date. And then we also have $10.9 million of non-Justice Center Annex projects budgeted for the next 5 years. So then we looked at what we expect the balance of the CIP fund to be at the end of this fiscal year. We expect it to be about $45.2 million. That means that we need, to fund all the next 5 years projects, we need $9.1 million of additional funding in the CIP fund. We do expect that we're going to get about $1.3 million from interest on the funds that we have in the CIP fund. So we remove that, and then the amount of the transfer that we expect to need from the general fund to transfer to the CIP to fund the next 5 years of projects is $7.8 million. I just want to point out that in that $7.8 million, there is $1,625,000 of net increase of funding for non-Justice Center related projects. Any questions on that? Okay, so this next slide then looks at that $7.8 million transfer that is expected from the general fund to the CIP fund. This shows all of our transfers that we are expecting in fiscal year 25, as well as what we are expecting for fiscal year 24. So anything highlighted in that like kind of orangey pinky color, those are transfers that are expected to the CIP fund from the general fund in both fiscal year 24 and 25. And then the transfers that are highlighted in green, those are standard transfers that we do expect every year. They go between the general fund and the Social Security and IMRF funds. So back and forth between those 3 funds, that's money that we expect will happen every year. It'll fluctuate based off of actual salaries, but generally those amounts will be paid roughly every year. And then in the blue, we have the ARPA funds that go from the ARPA fund to the general fund, and this will be our last year claiming those monies, and that will happen later this year as well. So we're expecting $1.4 million to move from the ARPA fund to the general fund yet this year. Okay, so this is the sheet that Mike was talking about. This is the look at the operating surplus. So maybe Russ, this will help. So for the fiscal year 24 budget, we look at what we expect for the general fund in revenues and expenditures, and then we try to remove anything that is not general operating revenues or expenditures. So anything that would be maybe a one-time only or a unique purchase or a unique receipt, like grant funds or something like that. So in fiscal year 25 budget, we didn't have to do any adjustments to the revenue. The $42.5 million that's shown there in revenue, that is exactly what was shown in the budget book. But on the expense side, we did have to do some adjustments. So the expenses before transfers amount was $40.7 million. And then we did add back in the routine transfers. Those are the sheriff's IMRF and Social Security transfers that we do. Those are standard, done every year. And then we did eliminate out some capital projects that would be unique to any particular year, not something that is consistent that we're going to see ongoingly. So we have purchase of some office furniture and other office equipment. We do have $150,000 in additional one-time only IT upgrades. We have $50,000 in the budget for budget software. And then we do also remove out our contingency of $1.9 million because even though we have built into the budget $1.9 million contingency, we don't typically use it. We don't plan to use it. We don't want to use it, but it's there if we need it. And so it is that safety net that we have should we need to spend it. So that kind of all gets backed out, and it shows that we end up having an operating surplus of $2,369,104. So once removing the non-standard transactions and things that happen within our budget and looking at what really it takes to operate the general fund business, we end up not really spending down the general fund as much from an operating perspective, even though on a cash perspective, we will spend it down some.
Just trying to understand where we came at the $40,704,000, going back to the general fund summary of the expenditures minus the CIP transfer of $42,301 and what that difference was. I didn't quite grasp that as you.
Okay, so if you look at page 59 in your budget book, in the far column under budget 25, you'll see the 40. So it says total expenditures before transfers is $40,704,865. So that is the starting number. So that includes expenditures of personnel, commodities, contractual, capital outlay out of the general fund, miscellaneous, and contingency. So in that $40.7 million are all those things. So then I'm going to put back into the expense the portion of transfers on this sheet, the one on page 59, it shows $9.5 million, but the portion of that $9.5 million that is related to ongoing normal operations of the general fund is $1.7 million. So that's that number. And then I removed out from the capital number various capital expenditures that we have budgeted that will be paid out of the general fund that are kind of one-time only things. And those are the 4 items listed there. And then lastly, contingency, which was in the $40.7 million beginning number. We're taking that out because we don't really expect to spend it or most of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Just the difference of the in-fund transfers of the $9.5 million minus your $7.6 million that goes to the CIP, I guess, or is it different? I think so.
Yeah, the difference is the 1.7. Yep.
Mindy, real quick on the contingency, I'm on page 8. I'm following you.
Page, what page?
8.
8.
The one
Okay.
that's up on the screen, I think.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Well, yeah, there is a surplus, but that wasn't what I was going to talk about. Thank you, Russ. The 1.9 million in the contingency,
Mhm.
this is listed as an expense.
Yes, contingency is an expense.
Right.
That is in the $40.7 million, so we're taking it back out.
Where does it go? If we're taking it out, it's just the general fund just has that much more money and it doesn't,
Yeah.
it's just not labeled anything.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
money that we've set aside for a use if we should need it,
Sure.
but we likely will not. So we're kind of acting from an operating standpoint, we don't expect to have to use it, so we're removing it from the calculation. So we show you what we actually think we're gonna have to spend.
Would that be because we're planning to spend so much money with the building that this is kind of like, hey, we wouldn't be spending this money on, we wouldn't set aside this money for contingency, let's make sure it's just available in the general fund, is that kind of the point, or is that?
But we would
What's
always.
the reason for not having the contingency? I know we don't use it, but I don't know where the money's going, I guess if it's not going there.
Well, it just remains in fund balance. If
Okay.
we don't spend, we set aside 5% of our expected expenditures as contingency. So in case, say, something costs us more, we have an unexpected expense, like we did have a cyber event a couple of, so we had some expenses related to that we didn't really plan on. And so that 5% of total expenditures is set aside in case we would need it. And we often don't, but sometimes we do need a little portion of it.
So we're not planning to put any though in, even if we would need a small portion of it? We're not planning to put any in contingency at all, is that what you're saying?
No, we have money that is the contingency money. It is in the budget as contingency, but we're backing it out for just an operating look. This is something that I think this calculation has been done for a long time here, and I mean, I think it can be kind of confusing,
Sure,
so.
yeah. Yeah, I'm not questioning what you're doing, I
No,
just
no,
don't
no,
understand.
no, I don't take it like that at all.
Yeah.
It is a look that was presented, or set up years ago to try to show what amount of money we actually think we will spend. In other words, your budgeted expenses are a little high because your contingency is $1.9 million. We don't think we'll really spend it, but based on being a fund and how you have to account for those things, how you have to budget for government, you have to have the money available should you need it. And so the money is there should we need it, but we don't expect that we'll likely spend a lot of it.
Sure, okay.
To add to that, essentially, we had the conception, this has been several years ago, that we knew if we had a contingency, there's a real problem with the courthouse. We know we have to go into savings to do that, so we laid that money in what we consider to be savings, knowing that if we have to spend $100,000 on the roof of the courthouse, we're gonna grab it out of savings. We've still budgeted and meet the legal requirements to spend that money, but we just didn't plan for planning purposes, because otherwise we're throwing what we think our bottom line off by what's gonna be close to $2 million at the end of the year with contingency, and that's why we do it that way. Does that help?
I think I'm getting there.
Okay.
Thanks.
Mr. Crawford.
I have a question, but before I do that, the other thing, Max, is it's inappropriate fiscally to spend 1 penny out of contingent. What you do is you transfer it to the right expense category and then you spend it out of the right, or you throw off all your accounting. My question is, on page 8, that surplus page, when I go down to what I call IT, which is the appraisal software, the updated county website, the tracking software, and the IT upgrade, this stuff we decided to do. And you might have explained this, Michael, in the executive committee. I was there, but I think I didn't retain it all. And there's about, in the FY24 revised budget, it's about $1 million if you add those 4 line items. My question is, maybe this sheet explains the answer to my question. It looks like of that $1 million, within a year, we won't need to budget but 150,000 of it, because the first 3 line items, they go away. They're dashed or zeroed. Is that correct?
Mostly, so there were a couple of one-time projects, or we'll say not routine projects, with the website update and the maintenance tracking software. So there's that one-time implementation costs, which we're recognizing here, and then it'll just be the ongoing costs. Next year, there's other IT upgrades that we have in the budget, so that's where for FY25, there's $150,000 and the $50,000 for the budgeting software listed. So those projects won't be done, but there will be other IT projects. And so in FY24, we had budgeted for significant increases in our technology, and that's what's represented in the $700,000.
Thank you.
So on this next slide, we're moving over into the tax levy portion. So this is just a sample tax bill, and as you can see here, this is for approximately $180,000 house, roughly an average house in Tazewell County. There's a variety of different taxing bodies. The taxing body highlighted in yellow is Tazewell County, so that's us, and that is the portion of this tax bill that we are talking about tonight. So in this particular tax bill, 7.3% of the entire tax bill is for Tazewell County specifically. Then looking a little bit more at the county's tax levy. So we are P-TEL County, and under P-TEL, we are limited by the annual increase in property taxes to either the lesser of 5% or the prior year's CIP, plus an allowance for new construction. So we have 11 levied funds. We have 9 capped by P-TEL, and we have 2 uncapped levied funds. The Veterans Assistance Fund, and also new this year is the Persons with Developmental Disabilities. That fund is also no longer a capped fund. Okay, so this next slide shows the proposed tax levy for fiscal year 25. And it shows on the left, it shows the pie representation. So you can see of the 11 funds, which funds are getting a bigger piece of the pie, what that dollar amount is, and it does show you the percentage of the total levy that goes to each of those funds. And that same information is basically represented on the right in the bar graph, but this one just gives you where you can stack up and see compared one year to the next. So it does show the total levy for the fiscal year 24 extended, fiscal year 24 estimate, and then fiscal year 25 budget. And you can see here that the increase in the tax levy from the fiscal year 24 extended levy to the fiscal year 25 proposed levy is $750,370. So we're going to talk just a little bit about the property tax rate increase. So under P-TEL, we are again limited by CIP for the prior year. So for calendar year 2023, CIP was 3.4%. And then P-TEL does allow that a little bit additional amount for, it's a calculation for new construction. So our limiting rate, which includes CIP plus the allowance for new construction, is 3.939% increase over the prior year's tax levy. Then we do have an increase of 0.516% due to the Veterans Assistance. And this increase is not capped, so it is allowed to be a little higher than some of the others. It's not capped by our total amount. And then the VA is requesting a new position for fiscal year 25, which is resulting in this little bit higher increase. The VA levy itself is increasing by 36% in the version that we have presented here. Since we first put this together and since we've talked to you, it has come to light that the VA is now going to move to the Tazewell building. And that means there will be some reduction to costs in their levy. Their rent cost will go away since we own the Tazewell building, as well as some utility costs and contingency. So that will drop somewhat as far as costs go, but we left the levy as we presented it to you previously, just for consistency's sake. And then lastly, we have 0.028% increase to the levy. And this is just an additional portion of levy to ensure capturing all potential levy dollars. Because everything that we're talking about as far as the levy goes at this point is all based on estimates. It is not based on actual information at this point. And so there's just this little bit extra amount that we felt comfortable putting forward that would help capture any potential extra levy dollars that weren't included in that limiting rate. Now, that gives us a total actual increase of 4.483% over fiscal year 24's levy. And one important thing to note, and it's listed on this ordinance, is that if we have over levied under PTEL, that any overage that has been put forward in the levy would be removed from the general fund. So we wouldn't reduce the highway or health department or anyone else's levy. The levy that would be reduced if we are over levying will be the general fund.
And that's by law, right? The state law requires that, right?
I do not believe so, no.
The state law requires that ordinance. It's up to us on where we take it from.
Okay, so it's just a
It's a Tazewell County rule that we balance it through the general fund?
It's,
Other counties?
it's the decision we're making for this particular budget.
okay.
And while I'm talking, I wanted to make a comment. We talked about this in the budget subcommittee when Steve was here on the VA budget, but that over 0.5% of the 4.4 is the reason he had to hire a new employee is because of all the work that the state of Illinois put on Tazewell County VA. So it's an unfunded mandate. Once again, thank you. People of Tazewell County need to understand that the General Assembly of Illinois is not their friend. Thank you.
Mr. Mennel,
The third recapture, I guess you might call it, is fairly new, right? Within the last few years, and I don't believe we have done that before. Have we not voted that down?
I don't think this is a recapture.
Okay.
This is, I do believe actually in the past, the levy was set so that it would capture that extra, the full amount that could be levied. I'm just breaking it out for you here so you can see it.
other questions? Anything else, ma'am? Okay.
Okay, so this last slide here just shows the all of our 11 levied funds and their dependency on tax levy dollars. So some funds rely more heavily on those property tax dollars than others, but the bulk of our funds do rely more than 50% on the property tax levy dollars.
Mr. Schneider?
Thank you. So why do some of these funds, I don't think I asked this last year, but if I did, forgive me. Why do some of these funds depend so heavily on the levy itself as a, so like we've got the VA is 100% funded by the tax levy. What if, these other ones are less than 65%. Why is that?
Well, some funds have other sources of revenue. So the VA literally has that and maybe an occasional donation that they can't really rely on, but that is how they pay for what they do. Now, let's take the health department. The health department has a levy, but they also do receive fees for services. They get grant money, so they have other sources of income that make up that difference.
So has the county ever, before PTEL, did the county just fund these departments with general fund money and that was how they got funded? Or because this is being funded on the increase, right? So how did we do that before?
I don't know, I didn't hear, I wasn't here.
right? The levy that we're levying, whatever, the 4%, is funding these departments, right? At certain levels, right? Some of them are 100%, some of them are less. I was just wondering, I think there was a comment made last year that if you're voting against the levy, that you're voting against supporting these departments, and while on paper that is true, but in reality, the county could fund those departments with other dollars, not from the extension of the levy.
You are correct, but I believe before PTEL, we still levied.
Right.
The difference.
Yes, you would have levied for sure, right? But that, my point is that the extension is now funding these things, not just the increase. So that's because of the way that we take the number that we had last year, we rebudget it and then add the 4.4% or whatever it is this year, whatever with the new construction. That 4.4% is what gets divvied up among these funds, correct?
No. The 4.4 is the increase from
Right.
2024 to 2025. The total levy gets divvied up among those funds.
The total levy does, but the extension is what gets divvied up amongst these people, because that's what's on this page here with your pie graph, right?
Well, that again, that shows the entire levy, that shows all
Right.
$17.5 million on that pie chart. So we can apply the levy dollars as we determine there is a need. So you could theoretically increase or decrease, say, highways levy based off of need. But our overall levy is based off of what we are limited by PTEL to
Okay.
take, and then we calculate out how that should be distributed. So the 4.4% that you're talking about,
Extension, right?
yeah, that part, we don't really maybe look at it like this 4.4% increase is gonna go, we're
Okay.
gonna look at the whole levy and
Okay.
how that's gonna work out, as
Sure.
opposed to like how that increase is gonna go.
Right.
Okay.
You got it.
You good, Max? Okay. Other questions? Mr. Hopkins?
Outside of PTEL, I forgot to ask this earlier, on the contingency, I'm just looking at the, page 3, all funds. In the contingency, is that just showing what we budgeted or what we've actually spent?
For what year?
Just looking in the past.
So if it is a budget, it's going to show you, like if it's a budget column, it's gonna show you what we have set aside for contingency. If it's showing you actual, it's gonna be what we actually used out of that. And again, you're going to, like Nick said, if we need contingency to fund a new roof, we will bring to the board a budget transfer, and say we're going to ask for $100,000 from contingency to maintenance and repairs line, and we'll move it out that way.
Just following up, and I apologize because I actually had thought through the actual in my head and then never read that out and then asked. But so 21, we were actually somehow brought money into contingency, and then 22 we spent $123,730 of the contingency we set aside.
Yeah, likely 21 was a audit adjustment of some form or fashion, something like that. And then 22 would be that we use that amount of contingency, yes.
Other questions? Mr. Crawford?
I'm gonna take another shot at the General Assembly to answer Max's inquiry. Max, in the old days, when I came on the board, the General Assembly was much more fiscally responsible than it has been for the last 25 years. And so they would pass laws. One of the reasons that we do a lot in the general fund that covers a lot of our departments without this huge levy for that fund is because the General Assembly back in the day would pass things like revenue and the circuit clerk, which has fees and fines and forfeitures and all kinds of revenue coming into the county that we don't have to have a property tax on the Tazewell County citizens. That's that's the way it was, and it's the way it should have stayed. But somewhere along the line, the General Assembly got to the point where, you know, we can just cause expense even if we don't provide a revenue stream. And talk about irresponsible, those people all should have been, anyways, it was wrong. But it's still going on. You know, Dave Zimmerman has fought, because I've been right there with him, for years about unfunded mandates coming out of Springfield. Unfortunately, we haven't had a lot of luck stifling that problem. You're gonna have to really elect more responsible people to the General Assembly in order to do that. But I wanted to explain how that revenue works with the levy to fund departments. Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, we're gonna dig into the budget. So can I get a motion to get the general fund budget on the floor? Mr. Stahl, Mr. Hopkins. So starting off, we're gonna start off on page 59, which is the page that Mindy mentioned just a minute ago. Try to attention to the revenue portion at the top of page 59. We are projecting revenue before transfers of $38,988,463. Are there questions, concerns, anything we need to talk about there? Hearing none, let's move on to the circuit clerk, page 60. Getting into the expenditures. I'm going fast, guys. We've done through these 3 times.
At least.
Yeah. And if I ask the circuit clerk for a comment, he'll take a bye, so I'm gonna ask. Ask him anyway?
Pass.
Pass, sorry. Not a bye. Hard pass, if I remember right. Hard pass. Okay, jury commission, page 64. State's attorney, page 68. Public defender, page 72. Courts, page 76. Court services, page 80. Probation upgrade, page 84. Court security, page 88. Sheriff, 91. EMA, 96. Coroner, page 100. Community development, page 104. County Board, page 108. County Auditor, page 112. County Clerk / Recorder, page 116.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Crawford.
is this, I'm referring to this sheet that,
We'll come back to that at the end.
you don't want an
I
amendment?
don't want it right now.
You don't want it?
It'll screw up my numbers.
Okay.
I know what I'm doing.
We always used to do it that way.
I understand that, but it will mess with my numbers.
Go ahead, you're the boss.
Anything else on County Clerk Recorder? Thank you for keeping me straight though. Page 125, County Treasurer. County Administration, page 129. Information Technology, page 134. Human Resources, page 138. Finance, 142. County Audit, 146. Farm, 149. Assessments, 152. Board of Review, 156. Building Administration, 160. Justice Center, 164. General County Revenue, page 168. Mr. Crawford.
I'm trying to figure out your lead here, Nick, but I think at this point in time, we have a motion on the floor to accept the county general fund, and I think it would be appropriate if I make an amendment to that motion to include the 5 line items on the county general fund, 4 of which are the recorder of deeds and 1 of which is county administration.
You just have to drive, don't you?
If you don't object, I would make that amendment.
I was gonna call on you to do that. There's been a motion made to amend the county general fund for those 5 items listed on the page totaling $46,712. Do I have a second? By Mr. Atkins. Mindy, would you please explain changes?
Yes, okay, so that first item there is just to correct an FTE number, in the book. And then the next 3 are related to, salaries. So in a source document we had, there wasn't a correct total, we brought it over, so we are, fixing just basically a calculation error, and that resulted in needing to increase Social Security and MRF for those. Then that led to needing to up contingency for those increases.
Ms. Brown.
What page are you discussing now? I'm not.
It's a single sheet.
Oh,
It's a
that's-
single,
well, I
looks
didn't
like
get
this.
that part. All right, I thought we were still on.
Russ jumped ahead of me, I was gonna guide us there, but he took an Uber and got ahead of us.
So now we're told that one more, please.
Okay, So the general fund, there's 5 things listed at the top there. And so the first one is just a change to the number of FTEs that was listed in the book. That will make this a correct number as 3 full FTEs in that line is specified. And then also in that same line, we have just basically a calculation or totaling error where there was a person's salary that was missed. And so that is being increased as well as their associated Social Security IMRF, and then in total, we are being contingency for that change.
Other questions? Mr. Crawford?
Not a question, but I just want to point out that ordinarily at tentative budget, we have a lot more of these adjustments, and the very fact that we have this 1/2 of one page for the all funds total and only 5 in the general fund is a testament to the finance department staying up on these things and causing less adjustments. Thank you.
I would wholeheartedly agree. Questions on the amendment? We understand the amendment we're voting on, just those 5 changes totaling $46,712. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Can I have a new expenditure number on the general fund, please?
The total expenditures for the general fund, including contingency, is $40,751,577.
Give that to me again, please.
$40,751,577. 40751,577.
And that excludes contingency?
So that includes.
Includes?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, but it doesn't include the transfers.
That is correct.
Everybody okay with that?
Say it again, 40 million?
$40,751,577, is that correct?
Yes.
Excluding the transfer in. So we are approving a revised budget for the general fund totaling $40,751,577. Is there any further discussion? Does anybody want the number with transfers and contingency included? You want that number? I've got it here if you want it.
This does have contingency in it, I think.
Yes, it does include contingency.
Do you want the other number or not? I'm not hearing any takers, so. Any other questions? Last chance. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have approved the general fund. Moving on to the special revenue funds, I'm on page 176. Unfortunately, we have to take motions for all of these. Can I get a motion to get this on the floor? Mr. Hopkins, Mr. Atkins, is there discussion? Page 176. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Page 179, Social Security. Can I get a motion to get that on the floor? Mr. Crawford, Mr. Mennel. Questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Page 182, Health Internal Services. Can I get a motion to get that on the floor? Mr. Crawford, Mr. Atkins. There is an amendment that needs to be done to that. Mr. Crawford, would you like to address that?
Yes, the 3 items are next on the sheet. It's called page 1, Department 185, Health Internal Services. There's 3 line items. I won't go through them, but we need to amend the motion to approve the Health Internal Services to include those, and I would so move.
And that's on page 185, Department 202. Is there a second to that motion? By Mr. Stahl. Any discussion? Mindy, you want to add anything to those?
Nope, it's just moving things from one line to another line for better tracking purposes.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
We have a motion before us as amended, the Health Services Department. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on. Township Bridge, that's on page 186. Can I get a motion to get that on the floor? Mr. Longfellow, Mr. Mennel. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. County Highway, page 189. Can I get a motion to get that on the floor? Mr. Crawford, Mr. Atkins. I'll look this side. Sorry. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? County motor fuel tax, page 194. Can I get a motion? Mr. Nelms, Ms. Crail. Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Township road motor fuel tax. Can I get a motion to get that on the floor? Mr. Mennel, Mr. Atkins. That's on page 198 if I didn't say that. Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. County bridge. Can I get a motion to get that on the floor? Mr. Hopkins, Mr. Josting. Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Matching tax. Can I get a motion to get that on the floor? Mr. Crawford, Mr. Atkins. Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. County Health, page 207. Can I get a motion to get down on the floor? Mr. Sin, Mr. Goddard. Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on down to the next page as soon as I get to it. Solid waste, page 222. Can I get a motion to get that on the floor? Mr. Atkins, Mr. Snyder. Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. SIPA grant, page 226. Can I get a motion to get that on the floor? Mr. Longfellow, Mr. Atkins. Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Veterans Assistance, page 230. Can I get a motion to get that on the floor? Mr. Crawford, Mr. Nelms. Mr. Crawford, would you make a motion, please?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to amend, including the 4 Veterans Assistance Fund line items on that same page, that's Fund 232. And they're all expense line items, and I don't need to read the totals, you can see them on the sheet.
And they're all reductions, is that correct? They are all reductions because of the move to the Tazewell building.
Yep.
Is there a second to his motion, Mr. Stahl? Discussion? All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Back to the original motion as amended, Veterans Assistance. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion to get animal control on the floor? Mr. Hopkins, Mr. Snyder, discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. GIS, can I get a motion to get that on the floor? Mr. Sim, Mr. Longfellow, discussion. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Persons with developmental disabilities, can I get a motion to get that on the floor? Mr. Trail, Mr. Hopkins, discussion. Hopkins. All in favor say aye. Opposed? American Rescue Plan, page 247. Can I get a motion to get that on the floor? Mr. Downs, Ms. Prowl, Discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
$250.
Page 250, National Opioid Settlement. Can I get a motion to get that on the floor? Nelms, Atkins, Mr. Crawford?
I'd make an amendment to include the last two line items on that page, 252, so moved.
So we're making a motion to amend, we're just moving this equal amounts to two different line items. Can I get a second? Mr. Hopkins, discussion on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. As amended, any discussion? All in favor of the National Opioid Settlement budget say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. The LATCF grant, I knew what that was about 3 weeks ago, but I don't now. Can I get a motion to get that on the floor? Mr. Mell and Mr. Stahl. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Emergency Transition Community Grant. Can I get a motion to get that on the floor? Mr. Schneider, Mr. Atkins, discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Sheriff's Grant Fund. Can I get a motion to get that on the floor? Mr. Atkins, Mr. Josting, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Treasurer Automation, page 263. Mr. Crawford. Ms. Prail, discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Probation upgrade, page 266. Can I get a motion? Atkins, Hopkins, discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Risk management and liability. Can I get a motion to get that on the floor? Mr. Atkins, Mr. Longfellow, discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Drug Court Fund, page 274. Atkins, Longfellow, discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Capital Improvement Fund. Any motion to get that on the floor? Mr. Crawford, Mr. Atkins, discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Recorder's Special Document Storage Fee Fund. Can I get a motion to get that on the floor? Mr. Atkins, Mr. Longfellow, discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. The informational fee funds are in there to look at. Any other business for this committee?
Just have two quick items. Within the budget book, we have a couple assumptions. The health insurance premiums and the yearly cost of living increases for non-union. So both those items will be coming through HR committee this month. If there were to be any changes, then we would need to update those for the final budget meeting. Also, for capital improvement projects, we continue to look to see if there are any projects that we're doing now that will need to carry over until next year. We'll take Broadway building as an example. We have the air handler units budgeted for next year, but if there's any other projects that we don't think we'll be able to complete by November 30th, then we would need to bring that forward in final budget to have that cost allocated. So we'd just be moving funds that we expected to spend this year to next year.
We are not approving the levies tonight. We talked about them in depth at our last committee meeting. If you have comments about levies, that was a pretty long discussion last year. If you have questions about levies before board night, please address them with the finance committee or Mr. Delury before then, so you can have a good understanding of what we're proposing. We had a really good discussion at the prior meetings, but, there's always seems to be questions on levies that people don't understand, so. Anything further for us tonight? Hearing none, we are in recess. Thank you for your time.
Good job, Nick.
Good job.
We'd start at 9 in the morning, we'd go till 4 in the afternoon. Break for lunch. Oh, it was sick. You would have thought